It's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government.
I have my own sources high up in the law enforcement, let's say, I'll just go that far, who say, not only do we believe he was an agent, but we don't believe he killed himself.
The intelligence agencies of all of our governments do terrible things. And to say that you know that Israel is the one moral intelligence agency that would never do it, come on.
And I think the real answer is Jeffrey Epstein was working on behalf of intel services, probably not American. And we have every right to ask, on whose behalf was he working? It's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty.
Okay, Jenk's right, it's not going away. Tucker Carlson there. Strong words for anyone trying to shame Americans who are curious about potential ties between Jeffrey Epstein and intelligence agencies like the CIA or Mossad. At this weekend's Turning Point USA Summit, Tucker implored the audience to not buy into the argument that acknowledging suspicious links between Epstein and Israel is anti-Semitic. It's not that way, he says. It's not conspiratorial either. Listen to this.
There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that. There's nothing anti-Semitic about saying, there's nothing even anti-Israel about saying that. Criticizing the behavior of a government agency does not make you a hater, it makes you a free person. You have a right to demand that foreign governments not be allowed to act against your interest. That's not creepy, it shouldn't be forbidden, and yet all of us have trained ourselves to believe that you can't say that somehow. That that's like too naughty and forbidden, and the effect of making that off limits has been to create a lot of resentment, and I'll say it, hate online, where people feel like they can't just say, like, what the hell is this? You have the former Israeli prime minister living in your house. You have had all this contact with the foreign government. Were you working on behalf of Mossad? Were you running a blackmail operation on behalf of foreign government? By the way, every single person in Washington, D.C. thinks that. I've never met anyone who doesn't think that. I don't know any of them that hate Israel, but no one feels they can say that. Why?
Yeah, Tucker's not going to be able to say that without reaction. We'll get to that in a little bit. The former prime minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett, responded to Tucker and questions, Tucker's questions. But before we get to that, Cenk, what do you make of Tucker Carlson's no holds barred Turning Point USA speech? He really just decided to lay it all out there.
Yeah, so that portion of the speech, I totally agree with. And so if people are discomforted by that, that's kind of their problem, not my problem. So the great majority of American people agree. So let's break it down, but I wanna be clear about it. So there's a couple parts that are totally indisputable. You can dispute them if you like, but it just shows you're detached from reality. So can we criticize the American government without being anti-American? Well, of course we can. We can love America. I love America. I think Tucker Carlson in his own way loves America. And we both criticize the government all the time, the American government. And the Iraq war was a disaster. I mean, almost everyone on the Democratic side and the Republican side has criticized the American government at some point, and pretty harshly, right? And no one's ever been called, I mean, sometimes the right wing used to call the left un-American for that stuff, but that garbage has ended, right? Like, so now even the right wing hates the Iraqi war and et cetera, right? So now, and what about an ethnic government? Well, I mean, of course, everybody would say you can't criticize the Saudi government because it's a Muslim state. That argument would be the most ridiculous argument anybody's ever heard, or you'd get laughed out of the room, right? If you said, you can't criticize the Turkish government because that would be an racist, anti-Turkish position, you get laughed out of the room, and you should, right? But when they say, you can't criticize the Israeli government or wonder if they are doing this kind of operation, then you hate Jews. No, that doesn't make any sense at all. And by the way, you're implicating all Jews in Mossad's actions. That's ludicrous. So Mossad is not calling random Jewish Americans or Jewish Norwegians or Jewish Israelis and go, oh, by the way, here's our secret agent plot. No, does the CIA call random Americans and be like, oh, hey, Bob, here's what we're gonna do next, right? No, they're responsible for their own actions, and not all Jews are. And if you say that all Jews are responsible for what Mossad might have done, you're a weirdo anti-Semite. Not us, you are. And the Israeli supporters are so weirdly defensive about this. They're like, I know Mossad didn't do it. How do you know Mossad didn't do it? If you ask me, hey, did the Turkish version of the CIA do something or not? I'd say, how the hell would I know? Right? Like, they didn't call me, they didn't call my uncle, how would I know? But they're like, no, Israel would never do that. No, you're a lunatic. The intelligence agencies of all of our governments do terrible things. And to say that you know that Israel is the one moral intelligence agency that would never do it, come on, it's absurd. In fact, you're almost telling on yourself if you say, I know definitively it's not Mossad. Why, are you an Israeli agent? I don't know how else you would know that, right? So, oh no, it's illegitimate to ask the question. So it's legitimate to ask if he was connected to Norway, Bolivia, Kazakhstan, like any other country. But if you ask it of Israel, somehow that magically becomes illegitimate. And even when there's massive ties, and we'll talk about the ties in a minute to Israel, Epstein did not have a lot of ties to the Norwegian government or the Peruvian government. He had a lot of ties to Israel, and so did Ghislaine Maxwell, massive ties. But even though those ties are clear, and we could talk about them, and we're not saying Mossad definitely did it. We're wondering, hey, well, that's a lot of ties to Mossad and Israel. They say, oh, you're not allowed to ask, but why am I not allowed to ask? That's ludicrous. Okay, so now I have more questions because I'm starting to wonder, Sharon, wait a minute, they seem, and when I say they, I mean the people that are in power in Washington, like Democratic politicians, Republican politicians, mainstream media, they all seem way more bothered by this theory than the theory that American presidents like Bill Clinton and Donald Trump were involved. They're like, oh yeah, that's bad, but that's okay. We can live with that one though. It might have been CIA or Mossad. How dare you, you anti-Semite? Huh, okay, and you wanna know why they're more touchy? Because it's one thing if the US government or any government covers up the crime of child rape and hundreds of cases of it. It's another if they were part of it. If they set up young underage American girls to get raped by the rich and powerful so they could have blackmail or whatever other thing that they need for their intelligence agency, if it's CIA, Mossad, MI6, whoever it might be, any intelligence agency that is connected to that, did not mind raping hundreds of underage American girls for their purposes. That is why it's thermonuclear. That is why, even though the whole country realizes that there were hundreds of Epstein clients, none of them have been prosecuted, and the government and yes, be honest, under both a Democratic president and a Republican president, in fact, multiple Democratic and multiple Republican presidents, the US government is like, we are never going to tell you that. We're not going to prosecute a single person ever, 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 because this is thermonuclear. Okay. You're confessing. So a lot more where that came from. Back to you, Sharon.
Yeah, you mentioned somebody who would be in the know, would perhaps be the only one who could tell us, and maybe this is that person. In response to questions about whether Epstein colluded with Israel's intelligence agency, Mossad, Naftali Bennett wrote this on X. We'll show it to you. As a former Israeli prime minister, with Mossad having reported directly to me, I say to you with 100% certainty, the accusation that Jeffrey Epstein somehow worked for Israel or the Mossad running a blackmail ring is categorically and totally false. Epstein's conduct, both the criminal, you okay, Cenk, and the merely despicable, had nothing whatsoever to do with the Mossad or the state of Israel. Epstein never worked for the Mossad. This accusation is a lie being peddled by prominent online personalities such as Tucker Carlson, pretending they know things they don't. They just make things up, say it with confidence, and these lies stick because it's Israel. There's a vicious wave of slander and lies against my country and my people. We just won't take it anymore. Well, Tucker clapped back when that went up. He's still going full steam ahead. You just won't take it anymore? Instead of issuing threats on social media, why don't you sit down for a rational interview on Jeffrey Epstein's ties to the Israeli government? Well, reach out to your office this morning. No word yet on whether Bennett has taken Tucker up on that offer. Meanwhile, some of the biggest defenders of Israel in Congress are upset that the Epstein story just will not go away. Republican Congressman Mike Lawler, annoyed that CNN's John Berman even asked him about the country's biggest news story. Let's take a look at that.
Frankly, this seems like a colossal waste of time and effort, and frankly, a lot of nonsense. There are a lot of issues facing this country right now. A dead pedophile ain't one of them.
Explain to me what you think the nonsense is here.
Well, frankly, the fact that you're even covering this. I mean, I don't even understand, frankly, why we're spending a lot of time on Jeffrey Epstein. The fact is, he was a pedophile who was arrested. He committed suicide.
Just so you know, it's being covered because the deputy director of the FBI is said to have taken off work on Friday to protest the Justice Department own handling of this.
Oh yeah, there's that. How about a Democrat for you, Richie Torres, arguing that this whole thing is just one big distraction?
Can we be clear that the Epstein controversy is a distraction of Donald Trump's own making, that he was fanning the flames of the Epstein conspiracy theory during the campaign, and so now he's essentially an arsonist pretending to be a firefighter, and there was no need for an investigation. The medical examiner had investigated the matter and found that Epstein died by suicide. The same conclusions were drawn by the Bureau of Federal Prisons. There was no need for a new investigation unless the purpose was to legitimize a conspiracy theory.
Or, Cenk, to find out more about Epstein's crimes, ties, and potential blackmail. I mean, it's not just about whether he committed suicide or somebody offed him, perhaps in that 1 minute disappearance of the prison tapes that have been released. What say you about both? I mean, you got both sides of the aisle, others, and Tucker Carlson beating them all back, saying, no, something stinks here.
Yeah, okay, so I'm now amused by these reactions. So, what connects Republican Representative Lawler with Democratic Representative Richie Torres? Oh, right, they're both enormous supporters of Israel. In fact, two of the biggest supporters of Israel in Congress. And look at that, it's bipartisan. And I was amused by how many times Lawler said, frankly, I mean, this is ridiculous. Please get it out of the news. Please get it out of the news, frankly. There's nothing to see here. The girls raped themselves, obviously. It was on tape, but it was just child porn of them getting raped by no one. Of course. Like you could almost sense the panic in his voice, right? And Torres says, this is a distraction. Brother, you're in the Democratic Party. MAGA is talking about how Trump himself might be on the Epstein list. And you think that is not something the Democrats should talk about. You think the Democrats should let Trump off the hook on that because, come on guys, come on. I mean, it's a fairy tale in Washington. Look, my whole life I grew up on mainstream media and believing that these politicians were real and that they were having debates. And I was such a naive little kid. I used to watch McLaughlin Report and Meet the Press and all those things, starting at like the age of, I don't forget if it was 10 or 12. Like I was really young. I'd watch Super Friends Wrestling and This Week with David Brinkley. Okay, and I thought it was real. I'm sure a lot of you today still think it's real, right? No, it's all theater. Look at the Democrats and the Republicans. The minute that topic is touched, you gotta move off of it. And look, I'll give Ari Berman credit. Nice job bringing that up and asking legitimate questions on CNN. I'm gonna get to Megyn Kelly in a second. I'm gonna get to the evidence on connections to Israel in a second. But look, guys, they keep using anti-Semitism, of course, as always, like one trick pony, right? Anything about Israel, you're like, Israel, anti-Semite. You're like, wait, I didn't even finish the sentence, right? But in this case, when they use it as a weapon, you're not allowed to ask questions about only one government and only one intelligence agency. You can ask all the questions you want about America and the CIA and every other country, but you're not allowed to ask about Israel ever about anything. You're not allowed to criticize them. You're not allowed to ask. You're not allowed to say it. Okay, because why? Anti-Semitism. All right, well guys, now you're using it as a weapon to protect your country, and you're driving up anti-Semitism. That's another part of the speech that Tucker was right about. Look, for a while in my lifetime, this was so effectively buried that the government was right. Oh, I think we can trick Democrats or Republicans. We just have mainstream media. We just got to get those buffoons to play along, and then and nobody will be the wiser, right? And that worked for decades. But now mainstream media is falling apart. There's all sorts of other media. We're all talking about it. So now when they try to bury it, and they're like, you better not say anything. Bigot, racist, anti-Semite, etc. It's getting 1,000 times worse because it's building and building and building online. And the more the government says you're not allowed to criticize Israel, the more the American people start to get enraged. And the more you connect the nefarious actions of any government with a religion, you're gonna drive up hatred towards that religion. It's a profoundly bad idea done enormously selfishly by the current government of Israel. So guys, give you an example. I use my own ethnic background all the time just to give you a sense of what someone who's unbiased looks like. So I remember when the Turkish government was accused of a false flag operation in Syria, right? And this is a bunch of years ago, we covered on the Young Turks. And the Turkish government said, how dare you, this is outrageous conspiracy theories about false flags. And then the foreign minister was caught on tape, and we played the tape, it was hilarious. He's like, we should attack our own place so that we have a reason to go into northern Syria with the Turkish army. Okay, now if you yelled anti-Turkish when that was revealed, laughed out of the building, right? As you should be. But when Israel gets caught doing anything, they're like, we represent all Jews. And all Jews did this. And if you criticize Israel at all, you're criticizing all Jews. Don't do that. Don't do that. I didn't do a false flag operation in Syria. My poor uncle who still lives in Turkey didn't do a false flag operation in Syria. Turkish intelligence did that. They're a government, they're an intelligence agency. They don't represent us all. And when you put that on Jews across the world, you're driving up anti-Semitism. There's no random Jewish person got a call from Mossad. It's both wrong, counterproductive, and most importantly, inaccurate. Inaccurate, don't smear all Jews. They got nothing to do with Mossad. They're not in Mossad, we're not in the CIA. So it's a disgusting use of anti-Semitism and bigotry as a shield and a weapon by the unsurprisingly disgusting current Israeli government. I mean, the guys who committed a genocide, they're burning up credibility for the very legitimate charge of anti-Semitism in other cases for their own political purposes. Wow, color me shocked by the angels who run the current Israeli government. So let's go to the evidence. I've got more, but I'm gonna just give you one tweet from Glenn Greenwald. Actually, before we go there, in case you're wondering, so remember Alex Acosta? He was the guy who let Epstein go with a slap on the wrist, the prison sentence where he didn't have to stay in prison. He just treated it like a hotel. He could go out at night, during the day, the entire day. That's not a prison, okay? And they said that it was solicitation of prostitution. No, it was rape of underage girls. Anyway, Acosta told others, and back in 2007, quote, I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. Okay, now, Acosta never said it on the record, so people say, oh, it's hearsay. No, people heard him say it and they reported, and we're not in a court of law. We're in a court of public opinion. So he apparently said that to multiple people. So several people, right or wrong, are saying, yeah, Acosta told me that Epstein was an intelligence agent and that's why he couldn't prosecute him. So whatever happened to Acosta anyway? Many years later, he became the labor secretary for Donald Trump in his first term. He has nothing to do with labor, no expertise in labor at all. He was a prosecutor. I'm sure it was a wild coincidence. Okay, so and once, and this is Times of Israel reporting this, Epstein himself told someone else that he was CIA. By the way, that you could say, hey, maybe not Mossad, maybe just CIA. That's what Epstein said. Perfectly legitimate, super legitimate. It might be just CIA. We don't know. Glenn writes, one of Epstein's closest friends was former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Ehud Barak visited Epstein only 30 times. Okay. Number two, a key source of Epstein's vast wealth, though mysterious, was from Les Wexner, whose primary life cause is Israel. I looked into it. That is also absolutely true. An enormous donor to AIPAC, absolutely obsessed with Israel. And one day he says, oh, that fired math teacher with no college degree, you could handle all of my wealth, hundreds of millions of dollars. And you could take almost as much as you like. Huh, that probably happens all the time. It's not like Les Wexner was a businessman who's sophisticated and knows what he's doing. Oh no, he was enormously good businessman, made a lot of money. But you're a math teacher with no college degree who was fired. Sure, take all my money. Yeah, that's probably happens. All right, number three, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, the billionaire Robert Maxwell, was a Mossad agent who mysteriously died after that was reported. Though Maxwell was British, Israel gave him a state funeral when he died. By the way, Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister at the time, attended. One of the most legendary Mossad agents of all time. He stole information that allowed them to win some of the wars that they won in the early years. And so if you're an Israeli, you can say, hey, listen, man, Robert Maxwell, he stole from the Americans, the British, etc. But God bless him. We won those wars because of Robert Maxwell. But you can't say he wasn't a Mossad agent. They give him a state funeral saying, what a great Mossad agent. That's interesting. Epstein's dead, but Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of the legendary Mossad agent, not dead. Okay, number four. Oh, by the way, here's another side note. No, before I go to that. Hundreds, maybe thousands of men raped underage girls. The only person currently in prison for it is a woman. Okay, because the rich and powerful men, we can't touch. Okay, number four, Epstein got the red carpet treatment when visiting Israel. Number five, Epstein bankrolled major investments in Israeli tech. Look, guys, all of this means it's definitely Mossad and we know and we cracked the case and this is definitive proof and it would stand up in court. No. The real proof is in the tapes, whether they still exist or not, or they were all destroyed by elves in the American government. Gnomes just popped up out of nowhere, but not CIA or Mossad. Just random gnomes and just grabbed all the tapes and grabbed all the clients and grabbed all the evidence and made it disappear. But probably not connected to our government or our allies' governments. They're trying to treat you like you're stupid. They are insulting our intelligence in every way imaginable. So today somebody, I mean, this happens all the time. It's no big deal. It's a minor thing. Some random guy say, oh, I can't believe you're working with Tucker Carlson on this. Okay, and now Megyn Kelly has joined in, and Megyn Kelly's like, yeah, of course it's legitimate to ask if it's a Mossad. We don't know that it's Mossad, we're asking. It's one of the most plausible theories. And people are like, oh, now you're working with Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson. I'm not working with anyone, man. We happen to be asking the same logical question. Can we all ask, hey, is it raining outside? Or is that, oh, now you guys are working together. And we're working together to what? Expose Donald Trump and his administration for covering this up? How is that a bad thing? Okay, look, don't believe your lying politicians. They're the ones who are constantly telling you this is no big deal, except as always, the two exceptions, Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna. No, in this case, a bunch of folks on the progressive left, AOC as well, questioning this, etc. Ro Khanna saying, let's have a vote right now on releasing the Epstein files. Let's go, let's put everybody on the record. Weird. Almost no other Republican or Democrat in the House is joining Ro Khanna and saying, let's expose the Epstein files. You know, Congress can do it. And he's saying, let's go, let's put it to a vote. And all the politicians are like, no way. Why? If you're a Democrat, why? Trump might be on the list. Now MAGA's saying Trump might be on the list. No. My handler, my babysitter, my friend who just randomly happens to follow me everywhere from AIPAC, who also randomly gave me $1 million, says no, but it can't be Mossad. That is the one thing you're not allowed to say. Okay, if you don't think this is weird, you think this is normal, that both parties, me and Tucker and Megyn aren't colluding, the Republican and Democratic politicians are colluding. We're just sitting on the outside going, what the hell is going on? Okay, but no, we're not allowed to ask that question. No, we are allowed, we just asked it, we all asked it forcefully, and if you try to cover it up by weaponizing bigotry to use for your own political purposes, you're a terrible person. And if you're covering up child rape, you're a terrible person. And that applies to almost all of Washington. All right. Sharon, any last thoughts?
I know we got to move out of here, but I do have just one last one. You know, you mentioned Ghislaine Maxwell. Why do you think we don't hear more from her? She's got to know more, leveraging. Why isn't she being talked about more?
Because no one in power will ever talk about any of this. Because like folks are talking about Ghislaine Maxwell now online very regularly, right? I mean, Tucker brought her up, I'm bringing her up. I mean, the fact that her dad was a legendary Mossad agent and happened to just get $1 billion is kind of relevant. And then Epstein turns up with hundreds of millions of dollars when he doesn't even have a college degree, right? And oh, look, the guy who gave him those hundreds of millions of dollars is an enormous supporter of his. We're not supposed to ask these questions. But the reason why it's not coming up in official circles is almost every politician in DC and almost every reporter in Washington, DC is deathly afraid of Israel. I mean, the one last thing, Sharon, to that point. When Tucker said everybody he knows in DC thinks it was Mossad, I don't have the same experience. Only some of the people I know in Washington think it was Mossad. But do any of those people say it publicly? No. Because they know that if you say something like that publicly, you'll be smeared for the rest of your life. And in official circles, they'll call you an anti-Semite and try to ruin your life for asking a perfectly legitimate question. So don't tell me they don't do it. When they do it, everyone knows they do it. That's why everyone is deathly afraid of criticizing Israel inside of Washington. So those are stone cold facts. They're doing a genocide now. We gave them another free $30 billion, both Trump and Biden. And then every time people criticize, oh, you're not allowed to, come on. They're insulting our intelligence. No, this is a very legitimate question. And of course, the government in its infinite corruption will never tell us the truth until you get one in our lifetime. We could just get one honest person into the White House. And look, if the CIA did it, why don't you just say it? Like, okay, oh yeah, that implicates the CIA. You're goddamn right, it implicates the CIA. It implicates America. No, it means America is cleaning up its own house. It implicates past governments. It doesn't implicate us today. It makes us look better today because we're willing to be honest. We're willing to call out our own government, our own intelligence agencies, and we're willing to, going forward, protect all American citizens. But the people in power in DC absolutely, positively refuse to do that. That is why everyone across the board has lost trust in government. And then they wonder, oh, why don't they like government? Why do they believe conspiracy theories? Because you're a bunch of liars. And we're all sick of everyone in government and almost everyone in mainstream media lying to us our whole lives. That's why you lost credibility. Okay. That was an excited answer to your calm question, but it's a good
No, I mean, I get it. I just, the news cycles, even when it's the worst, most horrific story, even when it's about war, whatever, you name it, it's only gonna last for so long. This one though feels different, because people like you, perhaps a Tucker, not gonna let it go, and there is that whole faction of MAGA who's saying deep state, and we want the answers now. We want to know what happened, so we'll see.
I have the names of the people who are making the claim that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself.
You can't come to me and say, everybody I know says he killed himself. And then I respond saying, I actually have my own sources who say he didn't. And then you say, well, your sources are not valid because they won't put their names on it.
The same thing holds true for people who are making claims on the other side. Otherwise, I can claim that he was working for a cadre of space aliens who are blackmailing high-profile Americans in order to protect from a future invasion.
Megyn Kelly recently debated Ben Shapiro on the notion that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself while in prison. And while Kelly hasn't really made a definitive statement about anything related to Epstein, she wants more evidence, she wants openness and transparency. Ben Shapiro, interestingly enough, quick and pretty eager to buy the government's claims. Interesting. Now, the debate began with Megyn Kelly potentially breaking news here about some of what her sources have been telling her about Epstein behind the scenes. Let's take a look.
I have my own sources high up in the law enforcement, let's say, I'll just go that far, who say, not only do we believe he was an agent, but we don't believe he killed himself.
I mean, that's fine. And then they should come out and they should say that. And then they should say who's covering that up.
Okay, but this is what, Ben, they can't. I mean, there are a lot of people who say they can't, right? They can't because let's look at what the administration is saying right now. They don't want to be the one to cross Trump. Look, my position is, let's show us all the evidence so we can come to our own conclusions.
I have names of the people. So I agree with you. That's fine.
So Ben Shapiro says he has his own sources. And I want to go to that video next because it's interesting who he's relying on here. He names names. Megyn Kelly says, look, these are conversations I've had with sources off the record. I haven't gotten permission to share their names, so I'm not gonna do that. Shapiro's like, I got my own sources. I'm gonna name some names. So let's hear who they are.
I have the names of the people who are making the claim that that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, and that the most gross, and sort of extreme of the conspiracy theories, just don't even call them conspiracy theories. The most sort of, extreme version of the theory is not true. I have names of the people who are claiming that. Okay, they are all in the administration.
You can't come to me and say, everybody I know says he killed himself. And then I respond saying, I actually have my own sources who say he didn't. And then you say, well, your sources are not valid because they won't put their names on it. Okay, who are your sources? Let's go down the list and then we'll talk about why they might be saying that.
My sources are the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, Dan Bongino, the Deputy Head of the FBI, and Pam Bondi, the Attorney General.
Your sources are the people that are alleged to have taken part in the cover-up? Okay, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, so look, he is now doing something that makes me think that he is super comfortable that the files are never, ever, ever going to be released.
100%.
Because he keeps saying in this conversation, but in other things I've seen him say as well, like, yeah, sure, I agree, they should release the files. He almost does it with a smirk, like, yeah, good luck with that, right? So I can say anything I want about it now because I know that Trump's not releasing the files, and obviously the Democrats never released the files. We got this, right? He seems like almost thrilled that the files are not released. And then he says, oh, are there people inside the government who say that it is intelligence agencies or that there really are clients? Well, why don't they come out then?
Actually, let's go to that video because I appreciate what Megyn Kelly says in response to his argument. Take a look.
You've got Kash, you've got Dan, and you've got Pam, and we've already discussed that memo in full detail. I'm talking about people behind the scenes who, prior to Trump taking office, I'm not gonna get too specific, but trust me, I have high-level sources who have said they don't believe any of that. Any of that. Okay. So, and I'm not going to out them for purposes of convincing you, but you're telling me name them. No, I'm not going to. I don't have authorization.
I'm not saying
and then you say, well, I dismiss all of it because you won't name them.
Hold on, Megyn, I'm not saying you should name them. I'm saying they should name themselves because otherwise they are being complicit in one of the greatest cover-ups in the history of the American
Republic. That's easy for you to say, Ben. That's easy. That's very easy for you to say.
Why is that easy for me to say? Why?
Because you'll have your job and you'll have your millions, no matter what they do.
Megyn, give me a break.
There are reasons not to cross the people who are in charge. And that's all I'm gonna say. And look, this is me not having drawn a conclusion. I don't know what the truth is.
And in addition to Shapiro still being able to enjoy his job and his millions, right? Or anyone who is part of the cover up being able to enjoy their jobs and their millions. I mean, there have been a lot of strange deaths among individuals who were associated with Epstein as well, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But the other thing I'll just say is Ben Shapiro insists on just believing what Trump administration officials are saying about the Epstein files. Okay, but there is reason to not trust them, especially after they put out a doctored video of Jeffrey Epstein's jail cell. No? Is that not suspicious at all to Ben Shapiro? That doesn't make these government officials lose credibility, these cabinet members of Trump's administration lose credibility?
Yeah, so what he's saying is, look, most of us think that Epstein was killed because there's no video of the hallway. They put out a fake video of the common room. It doesn't make any sense. We said on the day of that if there was no video in the hallway, he was likely killed. And every part of their story is falling apart, etc. So keep that in mind as then Ben Shapiro grins and goes, oh, if they'd like to, they should come out and say it. Well, the last guy who had evidence, Jeffrey Epstein, got killed in an American prison and both the Republicans and the Democrats said it was no big deal, and they covered up that story. So now you think it's no big deal for somebody to come out and say, yeah, I have all the evidence of either the CIA or Mossad or Clinton and Trump together doing all this, when there's bodies everywhere. And the other thing is, why is Shapiro and Mark Levin and almost every Israeli supporter the only ones out there going, yeah, we gotta move on. We gotta move on. This is it, there's nothing to see here. There's nothing to see here. And so
they're adding to the suspicions that people like us have.
100%. Like I wasn't nearly as suspicious until they started like panicking.
Exactly, exactly.
And so, but one more thing about that. So he says, oh, well, my sources are Donald Trump. What, don't you trust Donald Trump? No, so he's saying that in a taunting way, because forget the audience and the voters, a lot of the social media hosts and influencers are afraid of completely crossing Trump because they're worried about the reaction, right? So he knows that he could play that trick with Megyn Kelly, and Megyn Kelly has to at least go only halfway in that direction, right? She can't say, yeah, I don't trust Trump. So he's doing a rhetorical trick. But wait a minute, every time that Trump disagreed with Israel, Ben Shapiro came out and was like, this is wrong, this is outrageous, Trump is, what, you didn't trust Trump?
Yeah.
I thought you trusted Trump with everything. Watch, you'll see Ben Shapiro disagree with Trump a dozen more times in the next 3.5 years, right? And every time you can say to him, well, don't you trust Trump? Don't you trust Trump? No, it's just a debating trick, right? The reality is he doesn't trust Trump, he trusts Israel and only Israel.
Yeah, and look, one of the theories, and I was skeptical of this theory, but I warmed up to the idea after listening to the whole Epstein series from the Martyr Made podcast, because it's so well sourced and there's a lot of citations there that I looked into personally, and it just got me thinking, let's put it that way. But there's other elements of Epstein's life and death and the associates he had that make one believe, yeah, it seems like he was either working with Mossad or was an asset of Mossad's. So for instance, Alex Acosta, I've mentioned this before, who was the prosecutor in the Epstein case, took it easy on him and also gave him a sweetheart plea deal. And when he was asked about it after the fact, Acosta said, well, I was told to back off because Epstein was intelligence. Okay, that's interesting. And then there are other suspicious deaths of Epstein-tied individuals like model agent Jean-Luc Bernal, or Brunel, I should say, who was actually being investigated for supplying minors, girls to Jeffrey Epstein. He was actually a close associate of Epstein's. He also allegedly killed himself while in prison. And the cameras were also coincidentally off at the time that the suicide happened. I'm sure it's all a coincidence. The official Epstein autopsy said that it was suicide, right? That he hanged himself. But Epstein's brother said that upon further investigation, the bone fractures weren't consistent with a hanging. I don't know how much credibility there is behind that, but you also have Virginia Giuffre, I forget her last name specifically, but she was the one who accused Prince Andrew of assaulting her and being part of all of this. She's gone now, she's dead. She was.
I have one more. Ghislaine Maxwell's dad. Okay.
Robert Maxwell, who was tied to Mossad, that's well known.
Not tied to Mossad, he was Mossad. Right.
Yes.
So a legendary Israeli spy. But around the time that the Epstein news was breaking, he fell off his boat in the middle of the ocean and passed away.
Yeah, that happens often.
It happens in Russia a lot, and now, and by the way, I mean, yes, I know. Wow. Of course, Israel would never do that because it's not like they've killed a record number of journalists. Oh, right, they did in Gaza. It's not like they've killed a record number of human rights workers. Oh, right, they did in Gaza. It's not like they killed a record number of children. Oh, right, they did in Gaza.
Or Americans.
Yeah, but what's hilarious to me is, look, do I know Mossad definitely did it? Of course not. I don't have secret intelligence from Mossad or CIA, right? And maybe it's the CIA, right? And that's also perfectly plausible.
Absolutely.
Right, but if you say to me, oh, how dare you suggest it might be Mossad? Well, Mossad would never do anything like that. I mean, you'd have to be like painfully stupid or the biggest liar in the world to say that Mossad or the CIA is so moral that they would never do something like this. So now I'm gonna go to Glenn Greenwald. So again, remember guys, this is never about religion, Jews, not Jews, right? Because Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin what's interesting about them is not that they're Jewish, it's that they're massive Israeli supporters. And they often say that they talk to government officials in Israel, and which to me sounds like they're getting marching orders from them, right? Whereas there's a lot of Jewish people in media that are totally in the middle. They're as surprised as we are, what the hell is going on? And then there's been the great advocates like Dave Smith, Glenn Greenwald, et cetera. So Glenn wrote in the other day, he's like, okay, so you're saying the Mossad angle is crazy. Hold on, number one of Epstein's closest friends was former Israeli PM Ehud Barak.
Yes, yep.
And Barak visited him 30 times, okay? A key source for number two, a key source for Epstein's vast wealth, though mysterious, was from Les Wexner, whose primary life cause is Israel, okay? Huge donor to AIPAC. Ghislaine Maxwell's father, the billionaire Robert Maxwell, was a Mossad agent who mysteriously died after that was reported. Though Maxwell was British, Israel gave him a state funeral when he died. Also true, Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister at the time, or earlier prime minister, attended. Epstein got the red carpet treatment when visiting Israel. And number five, Epstein bankrolled major investments in Israeli tech. And there's more and more, right? But I don't read that to tell you guys, I'm sure it was Mossad. I really don't know, right? I read that to you to say, like, is that one of the possibilities? Well, of course it is, right? And if you say no, the CIA is a possibility, Clinton and Trump are a possibility, MI6 is a possibility, but Mossad, why, they would never. Then you're being absolutely ridiculous.
I introduced today an amendment demanding the full release of the Epstein files. This is a question of whose side are you on? Are you on the side of protecting the rich and the powerful who've put their thumb on the scales of government to suck out millions of dollars while working class Americans suffer? Or are you on the side of the people? The Attorney General said on her desk was the Epstein file. And now she's saying, no, nothing to see, don't release it.
Well, House Republicans took that question from Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna and said, yeah, we'll represent the rich and the powerful over the American people, because they essentially blocked an amendment that Ro Khanna attempted to pass in the House Rules Committee that would essentially force the release of the Epstein files. So again, Khanna's amendment would have forced Congress to vote on whether or not the Department of Justice should release said files. And today, the entire House actually voted on that amendment, and we'll tell you about how that went down shortly, because that's a really important update to this story. But first, let's start with what happened in the Rules Committee, shall we? So all 4 Democrats on the committee voted yes. They wanted, and 1 Republican, I should note, voted yes on Khanna's amendment. 7 other Republicans, though, voted against the amendment, thus killing it, blocking it. Now, after the amendment failed, Khanna wrote the following. Rules voted 5-7 to block the full House from voting on my amendment to have a full release of the Epstein files. People are fed up. We are fed up. Thanks, Ralph Norman. That's the Republican who actually voted in favor of the bill, or the amendment, I should say. Need to put the American people before party. Now, 7 Republicans who voted against the amendment were Virginia Foxx, a Republican from North Carolina. You also have Michelle Fischbach, a Republican from Minnesota, Aaron Hochin from Indiana, Nicholas Langworthy from New York, Austin Scott from Georgia, Morgan Griffith from Virginia, and Brian Jack from Georgia. We're gonna revisit these individuals in just a moment, but before we do, I wanna stop for a comment, Cenk.
Told you. What did I tell you this time? Ro Khanna, best guy in Congress. So look, I didn't start saying how good he was because out of nowhere, because I randomly liked the guy. He's not my uncle, right? As I used to say about Bernie. I started backing him because he's awesome. He put him to a vote. That's what I want. That's what we all want. Put him to a vote. Put him to a vote. By the way, if the Democrats ever get the House back, they better put the Democrats to a vote too. Okay, I want to see a vote on minimum wage. I want to see a vote on paid family leave. I want to see all these votes, okay? And I want to see a vote on Epstein again if the Democrats are back in charge. Because conveniently, whenever any party's in charge, they're like, Epstein, what name so? When they're in the minority, they're like, what about Epstein?
Exactly.
Right?
No, I'm so happy that you brought that up, Cenk, because I mean, if Democrats were so gung-ho about the federal government releasing the Epstein files, why didn't they vote on this during the Biden administration?
Yeah, so that's what I like about Roe, because he actually puts his money where his mouth is, or his votes where his mouth is. So he's like, okay, you guys want to cut the debt? No problem, I got a bill to cut the debt by $12 trillion. And it doesn't give anything to the rich, right? It actually gives to the average American. And it doesn't take away Medicaid or SNAP. And you look at it, you're like, damn, that's good, right? He's, oh, you want to lower drug prices? Why don't we take Trump's executive order, turn it into a bill? That way the courts can't knock it down and we have lower drug prices. So when he does it on this one, it grabs a lot more attention because, Epstein, etc. But that's beautiful, you put him to a test. So now what happened with the Republicans? They failed the test. So they're full of crap, and they're now, all those congressmen you just saw there are on the record as protecting the child rapists who were clients of Epstein.
Yep.
That period. There is no ands, ifs, or buts. And like I said, if the Democrats are back in charge, I want them on the record, right? So now it's an easier vote for Democrats to say, oh yeah, sure, let's see the Epstein files.
Yeah.
But I'll give credit to Ralph Norman, the Republican who did it. But one other thing you should know about that, the reason they had to kill it in committee is if it gets out of committee, then they all have to vote on it. And if the entire House has to vote on it, then it's gonna get super awkward as all the Republicans who talked a big game through all those years are gonna go, no way, no, hide the files, right? A lot of them are starting to make preemptive excuses now. Sure.
So before we get to the full House, because this did make its way to the House, and the House did vote on whether or not the federal government should be forced to release the Epstein files, but nonetheless, in the Rules Committee, you have all these Republicans who voted no, 7 Republicans who voted no to block Khanna's amendment. And so you could argue that they're providing cover for child predators, okay? And I am making that argument. But on top of that, it's interesting who they're heavily funded by, where they get the bulk of their campaign contributions from. Let's take a look at AIPAC Tracker, shall we? Where you'll see the list of said Republicans who voted to block the release of the Epstein files. Fox and Jack have taken close to $200,000 from the pro-Israel lobby. Langworthy has taken almost $100,000 from the pro-Israel lobby. Then you have Scott, Griffith, Fishbach, and Hoshin have each taken between $15,000 and $45,000 from the pro-Israel lobby. So, money talks, as we know. Oftentimes when we talk about members of Congress being bought, whether it's by pharmaceutical companies, oil industry, or in this case, the Israel lobby, you can take a look at the money, you could follow the money, and you can see how they behave when they're in Congress, how they vote. Now, Khanna's amendment, by the way, was brought before the entire House of Representatives today.
Before we get to that real quick, so if you're wondering why did they pay Virginia Fox more than the others, the $194,000? Because committee heads get more money because they can block a lot of votes. What I love about what Ro Khanna did was they were trying to bottle it up in committee, but they couldn't do it. First he forced them to vote in committee, then the House overall. So, and the higher you get up, the bigger the bribes get. So by the time you get to the leaders in the House and the Senate on the Democratic and Republican side, then you're talking millions of dollars from AIPAC. So that's how this game is played. So you might be wondering, well, if this amendment got blocked in the Rules Committee, how did it make its way to the full House? Well, Democrats actually pushed to oppose a procedural vote, and if their push was successful, it would trigger a debate and a vote on Khanna's amendment. It would also have sidelined the Republicans' legislative agenda for the day. Now, the vote is almost always a routine party line vote, with members of the majority party voting in favor and those in the minority party voting in opposition. It represents a last chance effort for members in the minority to try and force consideration of certain legislation. Now, you have a lot of Republican politicians pretending like they care deeply about children, pretending like they care deeply about issues like pedophilia, child sex abuse, things like that. But in the end, Republicans united and supported the procedural vote, bringing the final tally to
211 to 210 along party lines, clearing the majority threshold that Democrats were hoping to avoid. And so Representative Ralph Norman, who supported Khanna's amendment in the Rules Committee, by the way, voted with the rest of his party on a procedural vote. Norman said he believes Attorney General Pam Bondi has an independent party that's looking at it, which he called the right course. Interesting. Representative Michael Cloud, a Republican from Texas, offered a simpler explanation. Republicans generally vote against such democratic procedural motions, and this time shouldn't be an exception. They just get the added benefit of protecting their daddy, Donald Trump, and the Trump administration overall in this big Epstein cover-up. And Representative Tim Burchett told Axios, it's just politics. It's not about protecting little children, and that ticks me off. No, what ticks me off, Burchett, is you have an opportunity here to not go along with your partisan hackery and do the right thing in pressuring the Trump administration to release these documents. There's no rule, okay? God didn't speak to you from the heavens above and tell you you have no choice but to engage in partisan hackery to prevent the release of Epstein files. You made that decision, okay? But so in effect, this is providing cover for child sex predators. Congratulations. These people are total clowns, absolute clowns. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump was asked about the Epstein files again today, and here's his response.
These files were made up by Comey, they were made up by Obama, they were made up by the Biden, and we went through years of that with the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it, but she's handled it very well, and it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release.
For me at this point, the real question is this. Is Trump engaging in this cover-up because he's in the Epstein files, or is he engaging in these cover-ups because he's worried about assassination? And I'm being serious. Those are the two options in my mind at this point. That was a ridiculous statement. What was that?
No, he doesn't have to be worried about assassination if the CIA, but that one's less likely in the case of Trump. But or Mossad, the Israeli government said,
we've never had CIA assassinate presidents.
No, I hear you. He could be concerned about that. But if Mossad, like Israel, tells an American president not to do something, there's a 99% chance they're not going to do it. It's not like Biden released the Epstein tapes. What was his excuse? What's the thing that prevents American presidents from doing what American voters want in foreign policy? It's corporate donors for everything else, right? But it's usually Israel, right? So it's not like they can't stop an American president, they often do. So I'm not saying that that's definitely the answer, but I'm just saying that that is one of the other options, right? So, okay, I'm gonna come to Trump in a second because that was amazing what he said. But on the House vote, I just want you to be clear. So for all the Republicans making BS excuses of, well, it's a procedural vote and we didn't want to change any procedures and stuff. Okay, well then Representative Mark Weezy from Texas is offering up a standalone resolution, and he's like, let's just vote on this.
Right.
Okay, no problem, no procedural, nothing, right? You know how many Republican co-sponsors he has? 0. They're full of crap. They're all hiding it.
It's amazing.
Okay, and all the big, and wait, are the Republicans more at fault here than the Democrats? Yes. Number one, they're in charge right now. Okay. Number two, so don't give me any excuses. Number two, Biden didn't go around going Epstein files, Epstein files. Republicans went around Epstein files, Epstein files, Epstein files, right?
Yes.
Now they get in office, they're like, what name so?
100%. Okay, and by the way, just going back to the procedural vote for a second, right? So the argument that they would make is, well, we don't want to give Democrats, we don't want to give the minority any type of upper hand as it pertains to passing legislation. What legislation? You guys already passed the only legislation you care about, which is tax cuts for the rich, mostly, okay? A continuation of some of the tax cuts that Trump implemented in 2017 that do benefit working class people. Some tax cuts for working class people that will expire in 4 years, because of course they will. What else do you have on your agenda, Republican Party?
Oh, no, there was
nothing. You already got your goodies. You already did right by your donors. You're not gonna do crap for the American people. Let's just keep it real.
And they couldn't take a quarter of a day to discuss the Epstein files and release them. They're way too busy doing absolutely nothing.
So busy.
Okay, so what did you guys pass today? What did the Republicans pass today? Come on, guys, you're a joke, okay? So now to Trump. So he's now, so he said it on Truth Social, we covered that. Now you saw him on tape. He's saying that the files are fake. That Obama and Biden and James Comey created a fake Epstein file, and that's what they've been talking about this whole time.
Totally, that's exactly what happened.
But wait, if it was fake, why did you talk about it like it was real? Because you were already president. So if you were already president and Obama created it, then you would know that it was fake. So why did you pretend they were real? But then later, your administration, like less than a week ago, said that they don't exist. So which one is it? Are they fake or do they not exist? What is this? This is like the worst lies in American history.
Sloppiest cover up.
Yeah, and he's so sloppy that, again, even MAGA and half their hosts are like, awkward, because there's no way to defend this. There's no, okay, so then he says Obama, so he knew in his first term apparently, but okay, let's say that it's Biden. So if it's Biden and he created a fake Epstein file, took out the Democrats, for example, and just kept Trump and the others in it because it's fake, why didn't he use it? Like, I know if it's the real file, why Biden might not use it. CIA tells him not to, or Clinton's in it, etc. Right? But if the dossier is fake and it was meant to incriminate Trump and Biden did it, why didn't they use it before the election against Trump? None of it makes any sense. And by the way, I never thought, I thought Trump palled around with Epstein. I have no idea what he did. Am I positive he's on the list? No, not at all. I think the intelligence agency is the more likely answer, but the way Trump is acting makes me think that he's on the list.
Totally.
Because he's like, no, if you see any names on there, they're all fake. It was Comey, it was Russia hoax. Dude, you're in a cold sweat panic over this when you're not even releasing the files.
Can we just, and let me just say this, and then we gotta go. If it is true that Jeffrey Epstein was part of a Mossad or any foreign government, blackmail operation in an effort to have blackmail material on individuals in the highest echelons of power in the American government to ensure that our politicians do everything and anything the Israeli government wants, we should be furious about that. That means we're not free. That means we don't live in a free society. We don't live in a country where our vote matters at all, because no matter who you end up electing, right? The government is full to the brim of disgusting pedophiles that Israel and Mossad has blackmail on.
Look, whoever did this.
How does that not infuriate people? That's why people want to see the goods. We need to know what's going on, because if there's any confirmation that happened, first of all, think about how disgusting that is, okay? To, in some cases, based on the allegations, kidnap, okay, minors, young girls, and use them as bait to get blackmail on American politicians so Israel can get its way with what's happening in the region right now in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Look, the more this develops, the more I'm starting to believe that theory, because the people who love to defend Israel, they're panicking the most about the Epstein files getting released. Okay, they're the first, they're the most eager to just believe the lies coming out of the Trump administration about, the Epstein files not existing and all the other BS we've gotten from them so far. There's something really weird going on here. And if you're an American who takes pride in living in a democracy and a free society, you should be concerned if this is what's going on, because that means you have a foreign country dictating our foreign policy.
Yeah, so look guys, I got an interesting theory on that in a second. But I've got it, so number one, to Anna's point, I mean, it doesn't get any worse than this. Whoever did this is purposely knew they were going to have rich and powerful men rape underage American girls so that agency can have more power. Could be the CIA, for example. If the CIA did that, they have betrayed the American people at a level that is unforgivable, okay? To say, we're pretending to serve America, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna use American girls as rape fodder. So if the CIA did that, we should all be furious at that agency. If another government did that, funding them, are you kidding me? Like, we should consider going to war against a country like that.
I mean,
okay, so we're not gonna do that. I know us, we're not, and we should, like, forget it, I don't want war. My point is not that we do go to war. My point is that country, if it's a different country, has betrayed us beyond measure, okay? And so, all right, now, number two, Republicans, you're telling me that the rape of those girls, we can't find out anyone who did it because of procedure? Because you were gonna lose a half a day or a quarter of a day on a procedural vote? So we can't find out who did it. Okay, they have not prosecuted a single person outside of Epstein and Maxwell.
Yep.
Not one, but we know Prince Andrew did it. We know so many other people. There's hundreds of victims. So now people are saying there's thousands of victims, over 1,000 girls. Man, is Epstein that prolific? No, there's other people. We know there's other people. So as the government keeps telling us, yeah, there's other people. Yeah, they raped those girls. So what? We're gonna cover up for them. And then they go, why are you guys so mad? All right, and lastly, look at what Trump just did. When Ghislaine Maxwell is gonna go back up to appeal her case. When she goes to appeal her case, her lawyers are gonna say, Your Honor, the President of the United States that has all of the evidence at his disposal said the entire case is fake. You gotta let me go. And if any future government goes to prosecute the guys who actually did it, they're all gonna say, what do you mean? The president said all the evidence is fake. The president said all the evidence is fake. Now they're all gonna get out of jail free card. And now my wild theory. What changed was Trump? Because Trump never acted panicked about the list before. So he's acting panicked now. Who recently visited Trump? Oh, right, Netanyahu just came to town. And Trump's message about the Epstein files changed dramatically after Netanyahu came to town.
I mean, the message changed dramatically the day before he was set to meet with Netanyahu.
So, like, now we're getting into wild theories, but they're forcing us.
How are they wild?
Because they won't tell us what the truth. No, this portion, because look, what did Netanyahu tell him? Because it's not like he can just order Trump, because remember, Trump said no to further bombing of Iran when Israel
and the Houthis.
And the Houthis, right? So he defied Netanyahu a bunch of times, and we gave him credit for that.
That's why I don't think his name is in the files, to be honest.
That's why I thought his name wasn't on the files.
Yeah.
So, but then Netanyahu comes to visit, and all of a sudden Trump's in a panic over his name being in the files. What if Trump didn't realize that they had tape on him?
I don't know.
And then Netanyahu comes and goes, hey, you want to see a piece of tape I just brought with me?
A country where its people do not trust the government, its institutions, is a disaster, okay? And it's hard to trust, especially the federal government at this very moment, given what appears to be a cover-up, okay, period.
Not appears to be, it's definitely a cover-up. The only question is who's covering it up for
what reason?
For what reason?
Exactly. Now, final thing that I'll note, this just developed. So apparently Thomas Massie, who's a libertarian, but obviously oftentimes votes with Republicans, just posted this on X saying that Ro Khanna posted this on X saying that he and Thomas Massie are introducing the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a bipartisan bill to require the Attorney General to release the files within 30 days. So Massie is working on the rule. I mean, we'll see where that lands, but now we have two different votes in which Republicans have blocked an effort to release the Epstein files.
And what do we tell you all along? The two honest guys in Congress, Ro Khanna and Tom Massie, one a Democrat, the other a Republican. And by implication, by the way, you almost can't trust anyone else in Congress. Like, they're all sitting on their ass while Ro Khanna and Tom Massie introduce like half the bills that we talk about and 100% of the bills that the American people agree with.
Right.
The ones that give away everything to the donor class, everybody else in Congress handles. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows. every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.